I'm back again with season 5, episode 8 happening today, and I have another interesting guest with me. Before I introduce him to you, let me quickly tell you I'm Monalisa Joshi, and this is my talk show called Monalisa's Talk Show. And I've been really privileged of having interviewed more than 40 plus authors, and the journey is still going on. So I'm really feeling blessed and thankful to all the authors who have come and graced my show. So let's quickly welcome a software engineer by profession and also now a novelist, Krishna Kumar. Hi Krishna, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you for having me in the show. Like you said, you have done 40 plus authors and you've been introducing them in your show. This is really good. I've been following up on your interviews a bit recently, and you've been doing a really good job. Those it's quite long, longer interviews, going into the book, going into the author's background. Um, we are living where we have see reels on 10 seconds and 15 seconds at the most, but not long interviews like this, which is something really good. And I love to see and hear such things. And you're doing a good job. I'm very happy to be a part of this show.
Thank you so much, truly my honor. And the first thing that definitely comes to my mind going through your profile and also talking to you a bit that you are a software engineer by profession. So, how did you turn into a storyteller?
So, storytelling, the aim to tell the story has always been with me since my engineering days. It's not something new. I wanted to write, I wanted to do some fiction work way back, at least a decade now, for at least a decade now. Um, but after engineering, I got into a day job, and then I went on into the software line, and this has been my profession. So for writing, I quickly turn now and then to do some short stories and other things, but I've never managed to sit write properly a long format fiction. I have done some attempts, but they were not very successful. And but it has been constantly in my mind. I wanted to do something at some point, so I sit on it for a on 1 year, and then I skip for the next year. Try to go again, and this has been going on, ping ponging back and forth. And it was during COVID, during the lockdown, that it was something where I was having a lot of time in my mind, in my hands, and I didn't have anything else to do. Like, we had work, and then we were all confined to home, so
Yeah.
we were sticking there. And it was during this time I tried. Okay, let's try again. This time there is no distractions. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to go anywhere. So we are going confined here, and this is the time I managed to find some long, quite months, few months to sit to write, to develop an idea into a full form book. And this is when I wrote my first draft of the manuscript.
Okay. So you're saying that this manuscript has been into your mind for quite a long time. So how much time it actually take, like from conceptualizing it and then putting it into a draft and then bringing it out as a book?
The manuscript itself was not the case, because the past attempts were for different things. I had different ideas which I tried to write, but was really not able to finish them. Either I take a month break, and then when I go back and when I see what I have written, it was not very appealing anymore. And so this is what was preventing me from finishing it, or going to the manuscript again and again. But with COVID, I was actively pursuing for an idea. Like, I was brainstorming different things. Okay, now we have a lot of time with me. So what am I going to do? I do have work, but then there is more time after work. So what am I going to do? And this is when I kept brainstorming for various ideas where I can say, okay, let's see if this can be a book, or at least a short fiction or a long fiction or something around this. And this time I ended up, during this brainstorming, so there was this one night during COVID when I had a nightmare. So it was a nightmare, and I woke up from this nightmare, and I calmed myself down. And by the time I was back in the bed, I thought this nightmare was so fresh in my mind, and this I thought this could be an idea for a book. Why not turn, and it since it's a nightmare, it was more on a horror kind of tone. So I was like, okay, let's try to do this. What can happen when we have a similar kind of situation in real life? And I was thinking about it, trying to fall back asleep, and thinking about how this core can be expanded, and also how what can be a start into this book, what can be a beginning for this fiction. And by the time I slept that night, I had pretty much what how I want to start it and how I want to reach the idea itself. And it seemed very well, and the next morning it was still fresh, and I started writing it right away. And this time I was able to go back to the manuscript again and again every day, like, because I had nothing else to do. So we
Right.
go back and we start writing it again and again and again and again, and that ended up into a long format fiction, and that's how the first book was born.
So that's how the ferryman came into life. And
Yes,
I
yes.
want to know that, like writing on a horror genre, especially where you're dealing with nightmare, I'm sure you must have, gone into the conscious and subconscious of the characters. So did you have to do any kind of research for that, like knowing the, psychology of the characters?
Not no, there was not a need for me to do some research, because the novel begins with an incident that was from my life. So I just turned it into the beginning of this book, and certain of those people's mindset during this incident of my life, I just did the what if to this. What if they had all those because the novel talks about a bed that gives you it's a supernatural element, the bed that lets you hunt down people in your dreams and kill them, and they also die in the real life. So this was a core idea I had, and and I thought of a beginning that was from my own that for an a beginning that was an incident from my own life.
Yeah.
And I knew what happened during this time. I knew what was the mindset of the people involved during this incident in my life, and I just answered, what if these guys had the bed or the similar power with them at that point? And I just went on right away, and it answered it answered well. It was there was no need for more research other than what could be. Just
Yeah.
trying to answer the what could be question.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So do you give it a proper ending or it's on a cliffhanger? The book.
It can be seen as a proper ending, but it can also be seen as a cliffhanger, because some of the reviewers see that it is a ending because it doesn't end on a template note where a template fiction where it has a start, there is a middle, and then there is an end where the villain goes away and the hero saves the day. So this
Right.
book doesn't have such a thing, because
Hmm.
real life the hero doesn't always win in the real life, nor the villain always die in real life. So this book doesn't follow a traditional template. It just flows on its own, and it ends on a note, and at least it gives us ending to this particular story arc, what I had begun with in the first page. And it could be seen as a cliffhanger as well, because some of the readers have commented back, okay, what happens next?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I have not thought about what happens next. This is where this particular story arc ends. Maybe it could be explored in the future,
Right.
but as of now, this is where the book ends.
So there's a scope for a sequel maybe in the future.
Maybe I need to explore what can happen right after this book, the ending of this book. I need to explore things. I need to explore the ideas behind it.
Wonderful. And like talking about your presence on social media, you say that it's quite less. So how did you promote the book? Did you even do it, or it's like from like word to mouth kind of thing?
So yes, I do not have a very active social media presence. Even with Instagram, I opened an Instagram account 4 months back, because as of these days, promotion in Instagram is a kind of a boost for the books and other things.
Yeah.
And so initially I was trying to see forward book links and forward the messages in WhatsApp and other and maybe a Facebook post. And after a while, I thought, okay, let's approach someone who's a professional in it. And then I ended up with a good promotional company called Kimaya Services and Kimaya Creatives. And I contacted them, and they lit the path from then on. So they explained me what it is, how it is, and how it could go, and what I need to do. So I ended
Yeah.
up working on an Instagram account, on all those things. And the promotion itself is kind of being handled by this team, the
Hmm.
small team there, and they're doing a very good job in this. And in addition to this, most of the reviewers, readers, when they post in their social media accounts about the book, and as an Amazon review, that also helps for the book to know around. And on my end, personally, I'm doing a very very organic promotion. Like I put some banners. So I live in a small town in the south of India called Pondicherry.
Okay.
Most maybe you know it.
Yes, yes, I've heard.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful coastal town here. So there are some coffee shops and bookshops around the city, and it's a tourism. Yeah, the town thrives on a lot of tourism. So I did
Right.
some organic promotions with some banners and sticking around the city and other things. That's personally on my end.
That's nice. That's wonderful. Because most people, like most authors, what they do is, they try to go for book readings, book signings. So that is also something, very important part of PR. So if you are an author, so have you done any of that yet, or do you plan to
So
do it in the future?
so far, no, not yet. But yes, of course, this is something like you said. It is most of the authors do it. So this is something I look forward to maybe in the future.
Right. Okay, now another interesting thing that I read in your profile is that you own a library that has a collection of more than 1,000 books. So, how did that happen? And did you ever even get the time to read all those books?
It's like they say, you don't need to read a book in order to buy the book. You just buy and hoard.
Correct.
So I started reading around when I was in my third grade or something. And from then on, I stuck with comics. And slowly I moved into fiction work. But I've been collecting them since I was 10, 11 years old. And now, 20 years later, the collection has grown a lot.
So you must be a reader as well in order to you have written a good horror book, and I saw that you're also inspired by Stephen King. So he's like a horror king, or whatever we can say, the god of it. So do you also take inspiration in your writing as well in the term of like format or structuring it, or it's your own authentic style?
So the inspiration, okay. So with the Ferryman, when I started to write Ferryman, one thing I wanted to avoid was do a template horror that is currently in the market.
Right.
So most of the horror, or in this particular thing, all we see is all at least all I have seen is based
Hmm.
on folklore and
Yes.
mythology, and
True.
this was something I really wanted to avoid. And this
Yeah.
is where I took inspiration from Stephen King, because if you see King's work, most of his work is always based on an original idea. It doesn't
Business.
rely on any kind of folklore. It could be anything. He just walks somewhere and he sees something, and that becomes an idea, and then he explores
Yeah.
this idea.
Right.
And most of it is done in a very humble setting. You do not have big laboratories or zombies or anything. It's done in a very small town, in his hometown mostly, within
Right.
a circle. It's more like a rural setting. Most of his books rely on that. It's a very limited setting. and i and if you keep reading it, you know more about the US and the people around that, because it doesn't go beyond that particular setting, from his particular hometown. And I wanted to do something similar. I wanted to see why not do something similar here in an Indian setting, locally, so on something I'm very well aware of, like a town like Pondicherry or a town like Chennai, which is nearby to me, and three or four characters from here in these towns, and then they end up having against a supernatural element. So this was the kind of thing I was going for, something that doesn't that is not common in the environment as of now. I did not go for a folklore. I did not go for individual tales that they say around, but an original idea set in my closed exposure. And this is where I took inspiration from Stephen King, where I wanted to do something similar, but on my own original idea. And the chapters and everything, no, it was that there was no inspiration. So I just wrote them, and most of my chapters in the book are quite long, and I, and then I started splitting them up, so it gives the reader a good pace, because reading 50 pages together, whereas reading the chapters, 10 chapters within 50 pages did a quite huge difference for me. And so this is why split the chapters quite a lot in this book, and I think it's working well when it comes to the pace.
Wonderful. And do you further plan in the future to write, like again in the same genre, you would be exploring horror only, or you would like to, explore some other genres as well, like sub genres maybe?
I do not want to stick into a particular one. This is something, even with Ferryman, it was not my original intention to write horror. This was because, like I told you, I was exploring ideas. I was seeing what can work. I had a lot of old ideas, some pen notes that I had done 5, 6 years back. I was walking around everything, and then this nightmare happened, and it was horror. And then I started writing it right away. And like you told, I'm an avid reader, so I read a lot. And when it comes to horror, I read Stephen King a lot, and his son Joe Hill a lot. Both of them are quite good at doing this horror books quite well. And so I took an inspiration from them. But one thing I want to do is not to stick with this all the time. I want to explore different ideas that can appeal me, even if it is drama, even if it is thrillers, commercial entertainers, whatever. I want to explore this. Even I want to do some hard literary works in line of Salman Rushdie or some and other authors. But yeah, no, not I'm not sticking with. Maybe the next idea is also horror, and I explore it, and the next book ends up being an horror. But we should know that it is not my intention. It just that idea was appealing, and I wrote it. It was not my intention to stick with horror.
Like mostly we get to see when it comes to Indian horror writers that they find their niche in a particular way of writing. So it's like they would rather explore like into, as you have said, that folklore or maybe urban legends or rural some kind of folklore or sort of thing. So do you feel that somewhere like you should also write as what market asks for, especially when it comes to horror genre? Of course, I would say that your idea, your book and plot is original, and I was reading through the blurb. So, do you really feel this need to be there? Like writing for the market?
As of now, no, I do not feel the need to write for the market. I just want to explore something because, the writing is a long process. You spend months on it. And like I told you, it's been a whole decade where I've been attempting to write something and constantly not going back or failing or something happening there and stopping me from finishing it. And these are many, many good ideas that were never developed. One good thing is that writing this whole process of 6 or 7 months sitting down and writing, it has to appeal to you. You need to like this idea. You need to explore this idea. But if I'm trying to cater for the market, and let's say I'm going for a folklore, and which means I need to go do some research around some folklore around my surroundings, and then try to learn about it. Maybe I get some wrong points, right points. I need to assess everything, and then try to build a story out of something I go and learn,
Hmm.
which would not be appealing on the longer end. Maybe a month later, I see that the idea is not appealing, and then I just drop it. So for writing to work, you need to have an idea that is from you and something that you actually love, so that the next 6 months go ahead like you can try to go back, and it's still interesting at the end of seventh or eighth month, even though the book is not finished, or even if you've written, let's say, for instance, Ferryman, I had written almost 100,000 words, and it was still asking me to go back to it.
Okay.
And 100,000 is quite high compared to the metro read standards we have in Indian markets, which is around 50,000 is the maximum they go for the fiction works here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first draft of Ferryman was nearly 110,000, it's almost 110,000 words. That was the first draft. So such should be the idea that I need to explore so that I can go back and sit on it. So as of now, I would go for my own versions.
And I think it kind of somewhere makes you safe as well, that you have your own original idea. You don't have to, involve yourself more into research and all, and how people would take it. So that's the lovely thing you have said, that writing an original content is always better.
Yes, and the original, I do not want to go and search for this content. You see, the folklore. Let's say if I have an experience with such an folklore aspect on its own, and then I find it interesting, and this own experience could be turned into a book, I will go ahead and do it. But what I do not want to do is go ahead and then search for something, some content in some city or town, and then try to build a story on it. I do not want to do that. That's what I'm
Right.
against. Yeah.
But every town, almost every small town, has some kind of legend or folklore. So did it not ever appeal to you that maybe if I write on this, my book will do well? There would be more readers.
When writing a book, I was not thinking about the book or the best-selling aspect of it or appealing aspect. I just wanted to explore this idea, and this idea was so good. It was like go sit right kind of a situation. That's the situation I had, and I ended up doing it right away. And I do have a lot of stories around even my own city and even my father's hometown. And but then these ideas needs to give me a story for where I can sit and write. That's the important aspect of it. Just because I had this idea, I do not want to go and search a story that can fit into this idea. The idea has to come to me on its own, and I need to develop this story on there from there.
Right. And let's talk about the cover. Who did it? Because the cover page, I noticed that it looks like more like a Grim Reaper, but you have named it a ferryman. So why
So the
the
cover.
title ferryman also?
So the cover, it looks like so like I told you, I read a lot of comics, and
Right.
so with the first book with my publisher, they were proposing a lot of different graphical covers and images, but since I was into comics, I wanted to see if we can do a work based on in a comic like way.
Right.
And so we hired a artist, and the artist did the cover. So I gave him a base idea because the book contains a small island, a lake, a boat, a tree, a dead tree, all those things, and a boat with a lantern and a oar. And then there is the guy itself, the lead character here. So I just gave him the idea of what I need in the cover, and I also told him I do not want to fill the entire book with it. I do not
Right.
want the book to appear so black or so dark. And so he did a small, a very easier version of it. You see, just a simple version of it, and it took a comic-like art style. It is not a printed. It is not created using computer. It's a hand-drawn comic-like art style, and I loved it. And we ended up selecting this cover. And for the title itself, so the book involves the character, the lead character. It involves a character ferrying people from in the dream sequence. The character ferries people from their own bedroom to an island, the dead island we just saw in the cover. So between this, he ferries them, and so the title was like the ferryman seemed more appropriate. Everything goes with the story, the title, the cover, everything. When you read the book, you'll see that the cover is basically explaining the story.
So I'm going to definitely pick this book because it has caught my interest, especially the blurb, and I'm also a horror buff. So yeah, and I don't know whether you're aware or not. I'm also a publisher, so the recent book that has come out is a horror book from a publishing house.
Oh,
So yeah, it's called Of Nightmares and Shrieks. So there are short stories in it. So this is
okay.
something like a very interesting premise that I read about your book.
That's good to hear. I'll check out the book.
That would be wonderful. Okay, now I was noticing that you also write short stories. So, do you also further plan to publish them? And there's another thing I would ask here, that how was your journey, your entire journey of turning your book into a paperback? Like you are completely new to this world of publishing.
So it was difficult. So the writing part of the book itself was done entirely during the lockdown. So it took me 6 7 months between in 2020, and I finished the I finished the first draft in 2020. And then the lockdown was done, and I had to go to office. So it took my time for the next 1 year. And during 21 and 22, I kept the book going back to the book for the revisions, doing 4 to 5 drafts, trying to do the book in a very good way than the first, because the first manuscript, like you are a publisher, you know how many revisions you need to go into a book. So this was done, and when I was satisfied with what I had, I started approaching publishers, a lot of publishers. I did an Excel sheet, I did a homework, I did listed out the publishers, and I started sending the manuscripts. And most of them didn't respond, and a few of them responded, but they said that right now the market is not there for horror. So they do not want to approach it. And then I had a contact at Westland who was interested on the book. So the manuscript was shared, and she read through it, and she was about to get back to me with suggestions. And during this time, Amazon let go of Westland. I don't know if you know the story behind it. So Amazon was owning Westland, and they let go of Westland, and Westland was taken up by Pratilipi. So it
Yes,
was a
that's
whole scenario, and the contact was lost in during this transition. Otherwise, this contact was quite interested. So I had shared the blurb, and then I shared few chapters, and then they asked me to share the entire book. So I shared the book. The entire book was read, and they come back to me saying they need to do certain changes here, 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 and we should be discussing about it. And I don't know. At this point exactly, maybe it's an unfortunate event for me. So at this point exactly, Amazon let go of Westland, and they had this huge management issue within themselves, and the book was lost in it. And again, I tried a couple of other publishers, but it was not working. And I ended up saying, okay, it's been 2 years since I'm trying to see with the publishers, and I thought self-publish. Let's go for self-publishing. And we had one. I saw one good self-publisher nearby in Chennai. It's nearby for me, Notion Press, and they have been doing a lot of self-publishing work, and they're offering this as a proper service. And I got in touch with them, and it's very smooth. As a service, they do a very good job from the designing and from the editing and everything. Took 1 more year because they offered services of editing that went on for 6 7 months just for the editing itself, to and fro between myself and the editor. And after 1 year of editing and cover designing and other things, they published the book. I would It's been 2 years from the, or at least 1.5 years from the moment I started submissions to the moment it was published, and it was a quite a long process. And it's not. It's probably it's available both in hardcover and paperback. I have the hardcover edition. I like the hardcover edition. It's quite sturdy and it's good. It's
right.
also available in paperback.
Wonderful. So, would you like to read something?
Sure, why not? The So let me take something where, because you were asking me why it was the ferryman. So let me take a chapter where the first time my lead character, he's called Aditya. And let me take the chapter where he starts to becoming a ferryman. So yeah, this is right after he sleeps on the bed the first time. So he doesn't know what the bed does to him, or why he doesn't know anything about the bed. He just sleeps, and he thinks himself he's in a nightmare. But he finds himself in this island, and there's a boat, and this boat takes him to another island where it leads him into a tunnel, and this is where he understands what's about to come. So he ventures into the tunnel. So inside the tunnel, it was colder. The walls looked old, moist, and were filled with black moss. When Aditya touched them, they were freezing cold. He proceeded in with the light from the lantern illuminating his path. He had walked for a while when he heard it, a faint whimper, as if someone was about to cry. He could see the end of the tunnel from the light. It was another black door. It was closed, and the whimper was coming from the other side of the door. Aditya somehow knew what he had to do with the same way he knew the door on the island would definitely lead somewhere. He knew he should open the door and go in to the person who was weeping, and he knew he should walk this person back to the boat. He felt hatred towards the person who was crying. It was just a tinge a while back, but now it was so strong that he wanted to torment the person who was whimpering. He opened the door and went in. He saw that he was in a bedroom he was unfamiliar with. On the bed, he saw three people. Two were asleep, and the third was sitting upright. Aditya couldn't see him clearly in the dark, but it was this person who has been weeping. He looked at the people sleeping on the bed. It seemed like a man and a woman. Aditya went closer. The lantern's light illuminated the bed. One of the people who was sleeping in the bed was the pot-bellied man, Bharathan, and the other person was his wife. So these two people, so at the beginning of the book, he has a clash with them. These two people come into his life, and they have a clash going on in between them that kind of changes his life afterward. And when he sleeps in this bed, he's taken into their bedroom. He slowly walked to the whimpering man. He knew that was the man to whom he felt his hatred. It was that man whom he wanted to take out of here. As the lantern's light reached him, he saw that the man who was sitting was naked. He looked up at Aditya with his tear filled eyes. Aditya felt his breath. It was Bharathan, or at least a version of the man sleeping on the bed. As one version of Bharathan slept, the other sat beside him and cried. Aditya raised his hand and gestured to the weeping man to follow him. Bharathan obeyed instantly, stood up, and walked towards him. Aditya turned around and walked back through the door into the tunnel. He kept walking, and he could sense Bharathan following him. The man still made the whimpering sound, but now it sounded more like a sob. When they reached the door, Aditya hung the lantern back on its hook. He saw the boat ahead. He went to it, got in, and waited with the oar in his hand. Aditya watched as the man got into the boat. The man shivered from cold. Aditya felt good seeing him suffer. He let a few moments pass and then started rowing. The boat moved into the darkness again. He didn't know why he did all those things, but it felt like the right thing to do. He wanted to ferry this ugly piece of flesh into his death, and he knew it was where he was taking him. So this is where he turns into a ferryman for the first time. So he finds himself in the guy with the guys in the guy's bedroom with whom he had a dispute, and because of this dispute, his life has changed quite a bit. And he just sees him, and he knew for some reason he has to ferry him back to another place. And so he, without knowing anything, he starts ferrying him back, and this is where he actually turns into a ferryman right now, and hence the
Wonderful.
title Ferryman.
Interesting. I could actually feel that perhaps if your book can be changed into a web series, that would be really wonderful. If
It could be.
somebody
It
takes
could be.
notice. Yeah.
It could be because each chapter contains the nightmare sequences, especially, would be very appealing as a visual medium in a visual medium, and it has pretty much everything that, because in the books I think I can agree there is no big horror market as of right now in the industry, whereas when it comes to the visual medium as a series, as a web series, or as a movie, horror is making quite a good impression as of
Yes.
now, and I'm pretty sure this could work. And many readers have commented the same. More than a movie, they were saying exactly what you said. It's like,
Web
okay,
series.
this could
Yes.
work as a web series. Each episode can be one nightmare sequence, like one day, the night, the second night, the third night, the fourth night, and so on. So yeah, maybe let's see.
I think you should try to find someone actually who could help you out with this because it sounds really interesting. And do you have any favorite Indian horror author as well? Like since you are into writing horror, so do you have read any of the horror authors currently,
So,
like in India?
so right now, um, most of my reading these days are into hard literary works. Like I do not go back to so Stephen King, Joey Hill, or any other commercial fiction. Had read them at least 5 years back, and now I'm exploring more into. As a reader, I've grown into the next phase, and I'm exploring more into horror literature and literary works. So, and when I was reading commercial fiction, there was not much horror available, at least as a town like in a Pondicherry, before online Amazon and Flipkart and other online websites were available. It's very difficult to find books, and especially Indian authors here. So when I was reading commercial fiction, I was focusing on what was available here, like Chetan Bhagat and many other commercial writers. But these days, I'm grown out of it, and I'm totally into hard literary works in my reading space.
Okay. So hard literary book, in terms of what kind of books you're talking about here?
So my recent reads would be Salman Rushdie, and right now I'm reading The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. It won the Booker Prize for 2013,
More into
and
literary fiction.
yes, so more. It's no longer a template, a commercial thriller kind of things. Yeah, half a decade back, I would have said I'm reading Stephen King, Michael Crichton, Dan Brown, Chetan Bhagat, and a lot of other authors who did very good commercial fiction, and I was so into them. But now I need to savor it. Like each page needs to take longer time. I do not want to just do it like this. I want to stay slowly. I want to read all those things. I want to understand and go ahead. And even in Tamil, I read extensively in Tamil as well. So one of my favorite writers is Jay Mogan. I love his books, and it also falls under literature, quite intensive fiction works.
Right. So do you think, or do you ever feel that perhaps horror could also be written into a literary fiction way?
Yes, why not? It has been done, I think, before. But I'm not sure, but literary space holds. There's murder mysteries have been done in this way, so
Right.
why not horror? Why not horror? Thrillers have been done in this way, so why not horror? Yeah, who done it as a literary work? Why not horror?
Right, right. And that best part is that we have audience for both. People are
Exactly.
into more of reading commercial works as well, and also literary fiction. And I think literary is something people take more as like going for awards and for book prizes. Those kind of books take that place.
Yep.
So it has a better scope if you see that way.
Yes. Yes. People
So,
with a taste to hard literature, yeah, agreed.
and I had this opportunity to interview some of the leading Indian horror authors right now currently in India. So that one was Neil De Silva, if you have heard of him.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's Anirban Bhattacharya. He has also written a couple of horror books. But Neil De Silva obviously is kind of ruling the scenario right now. So if you get a chance, please read his books. He also writes well. But again, yeah, he touches those genre only, folklore, urban legends. So I found your content quite original. I was about to say that in the beginning as well. So I just want to ask you one thing. It's like live, but I'll still ask you on screen that would you be interested if I compile a book bringing all the Indian horror authors presently in the scenario along with you? Would you be interested to write a short story, maybe a
Under the
horror?
horror genre, why
Yes,
not? It would be good, of course.
lovely, lovely. So, last thing that you would like to say to your audience, to your readers, that why they should read the book The Ferryman.
Horror audience, it's very apt. The book, the cover, even the blurb, if you read it, it's outright horror work.
Right,
The only reason I would say is that it's quite original. It doesn't follow any template, and I take a bit of pride in trying to achieve it in this way. It is not something you have heard before. It is not something of a ghost or a folklore or a legend, or even it is not borrowing anything from mythology. It's outright original content, and you'd be open because most if you take folklore, if you're from this surroundings, or if you even as a word of mouth, you would have heard about it. You know what you're getting into. So it's a particular kind of ghost, or it's a particular kind of thing. So you get into it with knowing what it is about. But here it is not the case. Also, there's a very subtle horror. It doesn't have jump scares. It doesn't have gory ghosts and other
Right.
things. It's very subtle. It's more on a psychological aspect.
Psychological.
So it's a slow burn. People when they read it, they do call it as a slow burn because it takes time. It takes at one point, you readers seem to find it difficult to see what is the nightmare and what is the real real life happening and why things are going in this way. So this is also one thing that I was very conscious when I was doing this book. I did not want to have uh, any kind of templates like a ghost or a cowl or something that can be described in a very gory way, and it comes and hunts down people. These were
Right.
things I was staying away from. I wanted to do something very subtle and quite original. So this could be a different reading experience, especially if you are a horror buff. This could serve you very well, and I would be very very happy if you can try this book and give me a comment.
Definitely. So the audience, whoever is going to watch this video later, and also this will be available on YouTube, please pick the book. You have heard all the reasons that why you should read the book, The Ferryman by Krishna Kumar, because it's totally original. The content is novel, and you will love it. And please also follow my page, Monalisa's Talk Show. Lovely having you, Krishna, today. And I really enjoyed listening to your conversation. And also, this is something new, totally new for me, that somebody talking about an totally original content, because mostly I've interviewed horror authors and they would only talk about like urban legends, folklore, because they say that that is what sells and that's what they write.
That, agreed. So these are the things, when you want to write horror, you try to see things that appeals as a horror. So you go and research, learn about it, and do it. That's one way of doing it. I have no complaints on that. But this is another way of doing Ferryman, and the content is another way of doing approaching a horror based on an idea you just had, and you build the horror around it. You don't go search for the horror content outside. So this is one other way of doing it, and both of them have their own merits and demerits, and it's for the reader to read in and read these books and comment on it. And thank you for having me. It was a lovely time I had, and quite a good conversation we had. I've done a couple of talk shows before, and like I said, less online presence. I'm not used to these things, so I might have buffs or bluffed something at the middle, but. I was also a bit nervous at the beginning, but then this was so lucid. We went on it, and the conversation was surrounding the book and the general aspect of horror writing in India. And
Right.
these are things that I love to speak about. So it was really good for me. Thank you for having me here.
Lovely having you. And one thing I would like to say here, that since you have written almost like what is that, psycho paranormal. So I have many questions related to it. This will be something totally apart from your book. There would be some topics that I would like to talk to you, discuss about, and maybe we can do a live again with this kind of discussion. And I have some two, three more authors who write on this genre, so that it would be an interesting session if you have the time.
Definitely, we could do this. Like I said, I'm always happy to speak about things like this.
Wonderful. So thank you, audience, for joining us today. Thank you, Krishna. Lovely
Thank
talking
you.
to you. Have a great evening ahead. Bye, all. Take
Bye.
care.
See you.